Hi, I'm your host, Jurgen Strauss from Innova.Buzz, and I'm really excited today to welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast from relatively close by to where I am, Adelaide in South Australia. So it's about an 8-hour car journey. Sally Curtis, and Sally is a content repurposing whiz. Fascinating title. You work with brilliant individuals to leverage their content into engaging ways to actually connect with their audience through the power of visual content and little snippets of that. So excited to dig into that some more. Welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast, Sally. It's a great privilege to have you as my guest.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very thrilled to be here and sharing with you today. Thank you.
And Tanya Alvarez suggested that she introduced us and suggested that we have you on the Innova.Buzz podcast. And it's fascinating because I thought, Tanya, I can't remember speaking with Tanya on the podcast. And I just realized we've scheduled to have her on the podcast in a couple of weeks' time. So you've beaten her on. So a big hello to Tanya. All right. Now, one of the things that fascinated me when I was introduced to you and I read your LinkedIn profile was I think it was in the headline or subheading that you're best known for turning books into 2 years worth of social media posts. And I thought, that's absolutely brilliant. And I started looking, how do you do that? So really looking forward to learning more about that. You're also host of the Success Secrets Exposed podcast. So podcaster, a fellow podcaster. Yeah. And so there's lots of stuff to talk about. First thing I'd like to find out, though, is what's the impact you're making in the world today, Sally?
Oh, that's such a great question. For me, the thing that I love is the aha moments that I see in people's faces. So I believe the impact that we do and what I like to do by shining the light and helping spread other people's wisdom and inner genius through the content repurposing that we do is we're actually creating the impact of those ripple effects of the aha moments that somebody else's wisdom has as an effect on somebody else at the right time for them. So it's that ripple effect of aha moments that gives people a nudge up or the push or the shove or the inspiration to continue their growth phases.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm reminded of a comment somebody said to me. I just got to try and get it right. It's that was nothing is somebody else's inspiration or somebody else's revelation. It's kind of like we have these things we do that we take so much for granted, but if somebody else sees us do that, and I've had this experience lots, they said, "Oh, what was that? Yeah. How did you do that? That was amazing." And I'm like, "What do you mean? What did I do?" Yeah.
And that's an absolute perfect example and demonstration of when we are doing our effortless genius. So our inner genius is effortless to us. So it's very difficult for us to see and recognize. And often we don't even know what we're doing because we just do it. So that's, when we can package that and do something more with it and understand how to bring more of that through, so it's easy for us. That's the bit that gets me all excited.
Yeah, I've seen you write or publish somewhere, and maybe you talked about it. Maybe I wrote this down when you talked about it, that you describe yourself as an inner genius spotter. Yes. So how do you go about recognizing that in somebody else? How do you dig into that? Like, is it serendipitous? You observe them doing something and then you say, "Hey, stop, what was that you just did?" Or do you actually have a process for identifying what's the inner genius in this person's
I'm going to say all
makeup?
All of that. So the reason I say all of that is, generally speaking, there's a lot of stuff that will happen serendipitously, but I'm acutely aware when I'm, so for example, if I'm working with somebody or listening or watching a presentation, I'm acutely aware of things that repeat. So I'm it's almost that pattern hunter. Yeah. So if they say a phrase repeatedly, or they're referencing something repeatedly, or they're doing something repeatedly, and it's usually a throwaway line at the end of a paragraph, or, at the end of something they've said, that's usually the thing that they don't value as much as the audience do, for example. So that's their inner genius, that's their effortless stuff. But that's the bit that the audience absolutely hangs on. So usually if I'm at a seminar, for example, if I'm there for my own training, I've got 2 columns, what am I learning, but what am I observing? And I just can't help it. So I do know that I do instinctively see those things, and as a result of that, join dots for people. And I'll often have the conversation to what you've alluded to. Did you realise that you said this, and that the impact was this on the audience? Have you ever thought about unpacking that a little bit further, or those sorts of things, just to help them become aware of the impact that they're actually having? Because again, we often actually don't see that.
Yeah, we don't see it at the time, and sometimes we don't even know it's happened afterwards, do we?
Correct. Yeah. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I occasionally have somebody relate back to me either that they've heard me somewhere or seen me somewhere, and as a result they did something that had a big impact on them, or it was even secondhand. Somebody told somebody else about something that I'd done. And first of all, I get a huge buzz. Well, I've had an impact on somebody else. So this has changed that person's life. But secondly, I kind of reflect back and think, well, what if like that just happened serendipitously because they were somewhere and they observed me doing something. And now I didn't set out to change their life or have that impact on them. What if I could take that, be really intentional about having that impact on many people, not just sort of one person that, serendipity or coincidence connected us in some way and they took action as a result of whatever it was I did or said.
And isn't that the beautiful thing? It's all about, we might be doing our thing as we do, going about our day, and we hit somebody when they're in their inspired moment. They're in an inspired state to take on that learning. I think one of my favourite quotes is when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I think that's very, very relevant to what you've just said. When somebody hears something, they might have heard, it might have been said to them 3 or 4 times, but when they're prepared and ready and in an inspired state or a ready state to actually hear it and accept it and then create that change, that's the thing that gives me goosebumps, because that's, that's what we all look for is, those moments that make a difference for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I guess that's a great transition into the work you do and the idea of repurposing content and really scaling our visibility from whatever content we already have. And I keep reminding people that say, well, I don't have anything to write about. I keep reminding everybody that you've got content. You've already published content. You've answered questions in emails for clients. That's content. And so the teacher might appear, but the teacher's got to be findable by the student who's ready, right? So, talk to us a little bit about this idea of putting content out into whatever medium it is in a way that actually positions you such that when the time is right, the student will find you and say, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think the big shift I've seen and where we sort of really have ended up specialising is in this visual realm, and I'm going to sort of mention a couple of spots. So if you think of from a visual perspective, some people find it difficult to understand what I mean by visual. If you think of a postcard, so old school, you think of a postcard, that's a visual card, it's a visual tile or a representation. So what we do is take a few words and turn it into a painting. The way in which the audience can do that for themselves is break their content down into small bite-sized chunks. Now, we've come through COVID, but when we all went through that COVID, everybody was fatigued. We as content creators were fatigued. Our audience was really fatigued. And there was a real shift from reading long form content to this need to still want to be connected and consume people's thought leaders' content, but they only wanted it in small chunks. So we had to solve those problems both at the same time. We had to solve our fatigue and our audience fatigue, and that was where these bite-sized chunks became very very wanted, but very, consumable. So if someone's written an article or a book, even if you just look at your chapter titles, there's clues in the chapter titles. It could be a tile or, if I go back to a postcard that's just got a few words on it. But where the impact comes and the sortability and the finding the people that are like-minded is the choice in which you use of the visual that's on the background. So I often explain to clients, if you're going to use a photograph or a background image, make it a demonstration of the transformation that perhaps you create, or the frustration or the problem that your audience is going through. And what that does is it actually helps people go through when they're, scrolling as we do. It actually stops the scroll because they see a mirror reflection of either themselves, what they're seeking, or what they're trying to escape. And that mirror reflection, when people see something that's familiar and, touches them, that's where we get that real connection from. So that's the power that we have using visual graphics in our content creation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm just thinking one of the things I've observed recently, I've gotten more and more involved in Instagram as a medium, as a social media platform I'm using more. Yeah. And I have a personal account that I mainly put my own photography stuff on there. And in the personal account, I tend to get more advertising. Yeah. And the advertising on Instagram is very much like you described. It's got that big visual element that sort of captures your attention first. And then it's like, oh, okay. And then you read. Yeah. And then if it's something that's of interest, you kind of read the actual text part of the post.
Yeah, you dive into it more.
You dive into it, exactly. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good, that seems to be following that scheme.
Yeah, yeah. It's people now are very, very conscious of wanting to connect with the real person. So it's not, it's not it's even the more natural it is, the more real it is, the more authentic or vulnerable or, the less made up it is. People are, attracted to that realness now. We look for the real human connection, and there's really great ways to demonstrate that just feels resonant with you, but also is very resonant with your audience. It's still got to feel right. If you get a hinky feeling when you see something, then it's not right.
That's right.
Trust your instincts. I think my sign shows up there. Trust your instincts. If it feels right and it resonates, and you can see your audience in what you're using as imagery, and they can see themselves, then that's exactly what we want to be looking for. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the content that we put into these visual images, and because one of the things I often hear when I talk to people about content, it's going to be so much work. I have to write all this stuff. Yes. And I say, well, hang on, you've probably got it all. Now I'm thinking, and as I was preparing for this episode, I'm thinking, I've got 570 something published episodes of the Innova.Buzz podcast. For each of those episodes, I've got at least 12 posts, 12 Twitter posts that I've already pulled out that at the time we promoted for a period of time after the episode. Yeah. But they're probably to 95% evergreen quotes on the particular topic of expertise of that guest.
Yeah.
And I've got them documented somewhere. I could have So what's 575 by 10?
I don't know. I was just
you could
looking
work.
for my
Yeah. So nearly 6,000, right? Nearly 6,000 of these quotes. And if I only do one a day, well, I'm sorted for life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, talk to us a little bit about changing people's mindset around, it's so much work to produce new content.
Yeah. I think that what you've just expressed there is the fact that we actually do sit on so much gold that our first hiccup to overcome is the overwhelming feeling that there's so much that I've got to sort through. It's going to be hard. And I think as humans, we naturally overcomplicate everything. What you've just expressed there, all those Twitter snapshots, all those Twitter elements are absolutely perfect for a tile, to put on a tile. The great thing is with all of the technology we've got, you can probably pop that into an Excel spreadsheet, upload it into Canva, and it'll literally be automatically done for you now. So, there's, a spreadsheet and, an hour's work, and you've got all of that, all of those elements done. I think what people really, really need to do is not overcomplicate it. However, when we're hunting for our own inner genius, we do get bogged down in the detail of it, and we do sort of start to read everything. Yeah. So my tip would be is to when you're looking at an article or a book, don't read from top to bottom. And I've gone straight for my pencil. Just literally look at the sheet. And you remember back in I think it was the 90s, we had those images that you had to look you had to stare at for the image.
You had to go cross-eyed or something.
Literally go into that weird state and play with it, and literally look through squinted eyes and scan your blog post, your article that you've written, or your book, or whatever you've got in front of you. I find working with text is often easier to see the elements, and just highlight what jumps off the page at you. And it is as simple as that if we don't overcomplicate it. And usually what happens is our eyes will naturally go to the title, which is generally at the top of the page. And there's usually one or two lines that are often the last line or the last sentence of a paragraph, which is almost a throwaway line, which is your inner genius element. And there straight away is potentially 2 or 3 tiles, or tiles that could be used together and turned into a video. Don't overcomplicate. Just let your eyes guide you, because then you're working a little bit more intuitive, which does sound a bit weird, but that's where the simplicity is of making it simple for yourself. Anytime you've written dot points or you've got numbers, they're automatically are going to be tips, or, they're structures to something. And it might not be of great value to you because you might have got bored with it. And often I'll say to clients, the money's in the boring. If you've got bored with it, it's absolutely perfect for your audience right now, or the new audience that you want to bring into your arena.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. You've got the thing that you're not even aware that you're doing, because it's kind of like driving a car. You just get in the car and drive. And yet for a beginner, there's so many little aspects of that wow, that's amazing. How do you shift gears? How do you turn on the indicator? How do you turn on the lights while you're looking in the rearview mirror, and then keeping and changing lanes at the same time?
So true.
It's just driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you say, overcomplicated, and certainly that I agree, and I'm guilty of that. I put my hand up. Is the temptation, or the kind of, for me, it's an inner drive almost to, I've got all this stuff, I need to get it all out there.
Yeah.
And, well, just put 1 or 2 out this week.
Yeah,
and there's 1 or 2 bits of fabulous advice for somebody.
Yeah.
The fact that I've got another 5,700 or however many it was,
yes.
doesn't really matter. In fact, I just kind of go back to the well if I want to, or if I inspire to. So really, it is just about doing it, and it's a lot of the times we're guilty. I'm certainly guilty of, I need to get some more information in this. I want to pack some more in this. And instead of saying, for example, if I do a solo podcast, instead of saying what's one key point, and I'm going to expand on that, wrap it all up, put some structure around it, presentation, one key point. Rather than do that, I'll end up, and I've got to tell you this and this and this as well.
Yes. Yeah, we're all guilty of that, the fire hose approach.
Yeah.
I think if I can just share an example, and I wrote this down as I was coming on, again, not recognising all of the steps or the process, and this is why I love unpacking and getting in these inspired states to come onto these sorts of podcasts and share some wisdom. You've literally got the steps is sort. So let's sort a article or a blog post. Start with one, and then you can go through and scan it and find 5 elements in it that you can do something with it. So you've extracted 5 elements of your inner genius. And then you can create that into a visual graphic using tools like Canva, etc. And then template what you've created, and then you literally just repeat that. And I shared this with a client, and this was the exact process, which is why I was reflecting on it. I had a conversation with a client last night, and we were going through the tiles that we had created for him. And he said, have you created all of those tiles from that one article? And I went, yeah, because we've done, this, and we've got these bits, and we've done all that. And he said, so is that just this week's that we've done? Have we got? I said, no, we've got 3 months worth done. He was new to getting onto social media, to building that consistency. So for him, he needs to start somewhere. So we're starting with 2 posts a week. And because he had one really great article that we were able to pull elements out of, we've been able to create 3 months worth of content for him, so he can go back into delivery mode and just serving his clients, because we've unpacked and we've, sorted, we've extracted, and then we've created. And it literally is that simple if we keep ourselves out of our own way.
Yeah. There's the idea of the template that you mentioned. You say you create a template. So do you use kind of one visual for all the posts? Or we don't personally for clients, but that's exactly the place to start. So make it easy again, right? Yeah.
And it's only about making it easy so you can start to form a habit. So yes, we often will end up creating about 20 different versions for our clients, but if I go back to my own scenario, I started with 3, and I just kept using the 3, because then I got into the habit of how I could be consistent. So it starts somewhere, templatize it as you can. So for us, yes, create some templates so you've got something so you can duplicate and repeat. One of the other areas that people get stuck is, oh my God, what about the visuals? So I say, spend an hour, go through on Canva and, put in your keywords in the search bar on Canva and find the relevant images that are relevant to your audience and, a reflection of the transformation. So, find a way to trick yourself to not being the bottleneck is basically the tips here. Templates in Canva that have got some branded elements. They're in your colors. They've got your logo on it. Maybe your website if you need that, or, that might have the image of your book on it. So create a range of different templates. Find your imagery in advance. Then you find your article, you extract the wisdom out of it. You've got your images, you've got your templates, and it's quick and easy to create it. And there you've actually just worked out your process. And then when you get comfortable with that process, you can sort of start being a bit more creative, or you can speed it up. But the key is when you've actually worked out and created those habits, you can actually pass those habits on to somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah.
But you can't teach what you don't know. So
exactly, particularly when you've got it when you've worked it out and documented it as a process, right?
Yeah.
You said the magic word there. So I always get excited by process work.
Me too.
All right. One of the other things you mentioned was video. Do you have any thoughts on the benefits? And obviously video is more complex, so start with images, I'm imagining will be your advice. But in terms of video, what's the benefit of a video over just the static templated image? And when I say video, obviously if I get on a video and talk, that's got a huge benefit because I'm now connecting with my audience. But if it's let's say it's a video of, say, some slides going across, what would be benefit of that versus, say, a static one slide? Or
I suppose the bottom line from a benefit across the board with all of those scenarios is all of the social media platforms love video. So even if you've got static tiles, so going back to the postcard, and you put a couple of those in a row, you can download them as a video, which means the algorithm on the social media platforms think that it's a video, so they're favoured.
Okay.
The other great thing with tools like Canva is you've actually got video snippets, so you can actually build video snippets using their videos if you haven't got some of your own, or you can use the videos, like you were saying, snippets of your podcasts or your Zoom recordings or your speaking. You can find little snippets and, again, post those on social media. So the benefits ultimately from a video perspective across the board, regardless of the format, is algorithms love it. If the algorithm loves it, it loves you back, which means you get more eyeballs on your content. Obviously, if it's video snippets of you demonstrating your inner genius, in the way in which you connect, and the audience get to see your flavour and your personality, that connects in a deep way. And that's where I really find with the work that we do, when clients start to really take advantage of that, that's where the conversations and the comments and the celebrations or the questions start to get posed in the comments on social media, which means you can then start to build relationships. So to me, that's where, regardless of the form, if you're educating using slides or videos from within platforms like Canva, or you're educating when you're doing your own videos, etc., that all helps to build those relationships and the conversations, so you can take the conversations offline and be real humans.
Yes, it's all, and that's a really important point. I think this is all about starting a conversation. So it's social media is actually about being social, starting conversations.
It's a tool to build relationships. It's not the be-all and end-all of everything. It's the starting point, and it's sorry, got fingers coming out. We've just hit the bossy thing. Social media is a tool. It's not the only thing. It's not just marketing. It's the tool to do business development, which is talking to people.
Well, I think that's a really good point to transition into our buzz round. Having a ball talking about all this, and we only just touched on processes. There's a lot to unpack there, but it might be another episode. So let's hit the buzz round. So it's designed to, so there's 5 questions I ask of every guest. It's designed to inspire the audience to go and do something awesome as a result of your answers today.
Beautiful.
So you all set?
I am.
All right. What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Be consistent. And for me, innovation comes through standing up, not sitting down, finding a wall or a window with Post-it notes and unpacking stuff, and then doing the helicopter view, relocating things to see the pattern and seeing what magic you can create from it.
Excellent. Yes. So consistency is a big theme there, and it's been a big theme throughout the conversation today, I think. That I love the idea of the Post-it notes. I don't use Post-it notes nearly enough, but I do have lots of whiteboards over here. I love to get over there and just scribble on the whiteboards and then rub things out and rearrange stuff.
I love a good whiteboard. Post-it notes for me are easier when I'm in creative mode, because I can move them to different positions versus rubbing things out, unless, of course, I'm using my iPad. So,
Wonderful. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
absolutely that. And for me, it started on a window because I didn't have a glass sliding door, and unpacking my ideas and my IP and my thoughts started in tears, in a fetal position, uncomfortable because I just couldn't get myself out of my own way. So everything that we do and everything that I teach today has been a learnt process for me. So I think when there's value in understanding how you go about creating ideas and sort of seeing where your gold is, and it's taking that time to do it. And it's almost getting those ideas out, but actually when you hit a pause point where you think, I've got no more ideas, I just don't get it, just pushing through that last bit, because that's where the gold is, just on the other side of that pause.
Yeah, and so you have to kind of set aside that fear or that, yeah. And sometimes it's good to just take a break and come back to it as well, because
yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And that, I think, for me, one of my speaker buddies was talking about that from a negotiation perspective, and he was saying that the mind, in actual fact, actually does need that rest. So yes, we need to sort of unpack stuff. We need to push through a pause point. When we push through that pause point and we've got that little bit of gold or that insight that comes to us, then it's a case of just letting it sit, walking away for a while, because you come back with a different perspective. You see new stuff, you see where all the dots join. So that reflection scenario is very, very important too. Space.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you have a favourite resource you use most often? Sounds like the Post-it notes in the window.
It's definitely Post-it notes. I think the biggest thing I rebelled against from a resource perspective was having and giving somebody permission to keep me out of my own way. So I have a couple of VAs, and we've got a team now, but my operation manager, she's tasked with, if I'm getting in the way, if I'm the choke point, or you can see me doing anything, just give me the nudge, give me the Sally nag back. So finding somebody that's brave enough to help me keep myself out of my own way.
Yeah. Yes, that's I've heard various people, particularly software founders, that they've come up with the idea, they've actually coded something that then turned into a business, and they've grown that business, and then one of the most valuable roles in that business is the person that says to them, don't you dare code anything anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, because we've got specialists to do that now. You've got a different job.
Different role.
All right, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
Best way to keep a client on track would be, I'm going to have to say, systems and process. So keeping clients on track, we often talk about herding cats on steroids, because we work with lots of creative people. We love them to be creative, but we need to always come back to what is it we're doing. So for me, the systems and processes around that are, have we got templates? Have we got enough of the visual assets to work with the imagery? And just having fundamental checkpoints or templates or systems that doesn't clutter their creativity, but just gives us our anchors to work with, would be what I would say. That makes sense. Yeah,
I love it. It's interesting because a lot of the conversations I've had in the past around systems and building systems and following a certain process or framework, many people have come back and said, well, that's going to impede our creativity.
Yeah. To me, if I look at it, because I'm the biggest rebel as it relates to, following systems and processes, because I'll always want to find a faster, quicker way. But I have an appreciation for systems and processes because they do create the speed, because you can replicate and duplicate and then pass off to somebody else. So I've learned that through the process. but the creativity needs to bubble and percolate how it comes out. And for it to bubble and percolate, you've got to not have too many rules, but just enough rules that there's sort of just the buffers on a racetrack, but the racetrack's got lots of different ways you can go around doing it, but there's just that little bit of a buffer there. And then somebody that just keeps the buffer up, which is my ops manager.
And also I find particularly repetitive tasks, if you don't have to think about, well, how did I do this last time? What were the steps? And I haven't got the steps in the right order. Well, that's my brain using up brain power that I could be using for creativity. If I've got the list over here that says, here's the first step, here's the second step, here's the third step, then my brain's free to think about, is this actually the smartest way to do it, or can I improve this? Or is there some new idea I can bring into this? So it really it kind of actually, I think it frees up creativity.
Yeah, and creates innovation. Yeah, massive innovation and reflection. So, yeah, huge power in that.
All right, the last question of the buzz round. What's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Oh, I'm going to say that word again. The greatest differentiator is consistency. It's the most powerful differentiator there is of all. If you're consistent with your visibility, with your message, with your personal brand, that is what you will become recognized and known for. It's how people find you. It's how you become sought out. It's sought after, sold out, and how you actually end up becoming somebody's obvious choice. So consistency is king.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, and often I have conversations with people that are interested in starting a podcast, and you'll appreciate this. And I say this, well, let's take a step back. Why are you doing the podcast? Have you been a guest on podcasts? And I go through those kind of things, and I remind them that there's so many podcasts on the internet, like millions probably, that have got to 5, 7, I think 7's the magic number, sometimes 10, 15 episodes. In fact, I've got one that got to 30 and it's kind of on a permanent pause, hiatus, of people that just decide they're not getting an immediate return because perhaps they're not doing the things that they could be doing to get an immediate return, or they're just discovering, hey, this is a lot more work than I anticipated, so it stops. And I say, it's not, the most important thing is just to keep it consistent and keep it going. And often I get asked, well, how often should I publish an episode? And I say, well, how often can you consistently publish an episode for 10 years?
And
that's the answer.
Thank you for sharing that, because that comes back to one of the questions we get asked a lot is, you keep rabbiting on about consistency, but what is consistency? And that's different for everybody. And as you've just highlighted, it's finding your consistent rhythm, whether that's posting every day, or whether it's once a week. Find your consistent rhythm that you can play at, because again, you're forming habits. Then when you form that habit of consistency, you might be able to increase it a little bit, but start with something you can do habitually.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks, Sally. This has been a fabulous conversation. Now, where can people find out more about you and the work you do, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you've shared today?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, being somebody that loves consistency, I love also to make it really easy. So the best place to reach me is via my Linktree URL, and that's Linktree/Sally A. Curtis. What you'll find on there is all of my links to my free resources, any events that I might be running, the podcast, my website, and everything else you could possibly think of. So everything all in one place on Linktree, Sally A. Curtis.
Brilliant. And we'll have that link in the show notes. We'll only need one link in the show notes. So it makes it easy for us too.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. All right. Well, finally, Sally, what action would you like to see our listener take out of our conversation today?
I would love them to just have a play with some form of content that they've probably got sitting on their desk over in a special spot over in the corner that they've been thinking they should do something with, that's still sitting there. Grab that piece of paper, that note, whatever it may be, and turn it into 2 little short pieces of bite-sized content pieces. and have some fun with it.
Excellent. Well, just 2 though, so that's a really easy step to do. Yeah. And I know you said you're pointing over here. I've got a notebook over here where I've sort of started doing some journaling or so on. It's half full. And sometimes I kind of reflect back and I read some stuff and I think, oh, there's some really interesting things there, thoughts. And even that's content. I don't use that for anything else. Some of it's quite personal, obviously, but some of it is thoughts and reflections on the business or ideas I've had for the business. So even something as simple as that. Of course, if you're a podcaster or a video producer or a blog writer or a book author or an article writer, well, then, you know, you've already done heaps of work to produce content. So just go and find something.
Find something, but don't go down the rabbit warren of going, is this good enough? Is that good enough? Trying to sort it. Just find one thing. And again, it's like, you know, when a magician comes to you and they've got all the deck of cards and they say,
just pick one and do it.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Great metaphor. All right. Well, thanks, Sally. This has been wonderful. Really enjoyed the conversation. All the best for the future, and let's stay in touch.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.